Hollywood likes you a certain way. They like you a certain way. They have yeah, Hollywood's interesting. They like you a certain way when you're black.
Hollywood, I think, is racist. I've always felt that. I mean, although I'm a part of it, I just think it is right from the beginning.
Spear chucker.
White trash.
Jungle bunny.
Funky.
I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't have to. I know you ain't gonna believe it because you up. I don't. Hey. I'll probably die tomorrow.
Long before social media gave everyone a platform, legends like Richard Pryor and Paul Mooney were already taking on the dark forces in Hollywood, fighting against the powerful elites who controlled the industry from behind the scenes.
Oprah Winfrey, it's like, I know y'all love her and all that other but it's for me, I've checked her out, and Oprah's gotten on my nerves. I mean, seriously.
They were not just comedians. They were messengers, standing on Hollywood's highest stages and calling out the corruption hiding in plain sight. And here's what they desperately wanted us to know.
White producers like UPN, you pick any you want. They just do these little black films to get this money so they can produce these stupid white films.
Richard Pryor and Paul Mooney weren't just stand-up comedians. They were cultural critics with the courage to say what everyone else was too scared to whisper. Pryor's raw humor exposed the pain of racial injustice and the reality of poverty, while Mooney's biting wit left no stone unturned, especially when it came to Hollywood.
You see how white people relate to black people that really kiss their behinds? They'll tell you, oh, I love Jane, I just love it. Why can't you be more like Jane?
Richard was famous for his controversial jokes and how he could flip painful truths into comedy. His perspective on race, class, and especially Hollywood's darker side made him a target in some circles, but he didn't hold back. And Mooney? Well, Mooney took it a step further, warning us about what lay beneath Hollywood's glamorous surface. Paul Mooney didn't just entertain, he exposed. And one of his biggest targets, Oprah Winfrey.
Be realistic, the nigga don't count. Oprah counts, and that she's getting on my nerves because you know what? I went back on Oprah. I've been following her up and that fat skinny. I don't like her.
Mooney's critiques of Oprah went deeper than petty criticism. To him, Oprah represented a figure who'd gained power and influence, but at what cost? He openly questioned her loyalty to the black community, pointing out her ties to white elites and her sometimes controversial choice of guests. He saw her as someone who'd used her power to climb, but had left the people she claimed to represent behind. But it wasn't just Oprah that Mooney had a bone to pick with. In his eyes, powerful Hollywood executives were even more dangerous. For more than 30 years, Paul Mooney had a front row seat to Hollywood, all thanks to his close connection with Richard Pryor. But it wasn't just the glamorous side of the entertainment industry that he saw. He also witnessed the darker side of racism, power struggles, and betrayal behind the scenes. Mooney was often described as cocky, blunt, sharp-tongued, and even rude. In his own words, his comedy came straight from his life experiences. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind, and he used his platform to shine a light on some uncomfortable truths. In a 2008 interview with Real Black TV, Mooney gave some real insight into how Hollywood treated black artists. With a sly grin, he said,
Hollywood likes you a certain way. They like you a certain way. They have yeah, Hollywood's interesting. They like you a certain way when you're black.
This blunt statement highlighted Hollywood's tendency to mold black entertainers into something more acceptable, pushing them to abandon their true selves in exchange for approval. But Paul Mooney refused to play by those rules. He stayed true to himself and knew all too well the unspoken rules that limited black talent in Hollywood. He was deeply influenced by watching Sidney Poitier, a star who had navigated the same tricky landscape. While Poitier was highly respected, he still had to deal with the industry's biases. One major turning point was when Poitier slapped a white man in the 1969 film In the Heat of the Night, challenging Hollywood's long-standing stereotypes and showing that the perfect image was starting to crack. In a 2010 interview with Pop Matters, Mooney didn't hold back when talking about Hollywood's lack of loyalty. White people are not very loyal to their perfect N or to their house ends. As soon as they're naughtin', they'll drop them like a hot potato, he said. His words were a blunt reminder of how quickly the industry could turn its back on even its most celebrated black stars. Mooney didn't just call out the system, he also targeted specific people, including a certain talk show diva who has always been in the spotlight. Mooney hinted that she might secretly wish she could switch shades, and even referred to her as a degree-carrying Aunt Jemima. He went on to say, Oprah is a double agent. Oprah is a danger to us. Oprah is Aunt Jemima with a degree. These comments were sparked by an interview where Oprah admitted that at one point she had thought about being white. Back then, her statement stirred controversy, and while some brushed it off, others were left feeling uneasy. Mooney never trusted Oprah, which is why he made multiple jokes about her over the years. Mooney's sharp social commentary also shined in his work on Chappelle's show, particularly in the famous Ask a Black Dude sketch. With his usual boldness, Mooney tackled the complexities of being black in America. He pointed out the way mainstream media love to borrow from black culture while often ignoring its origins. Everybody wanna be an N, but don't nobody wanna be an N, he said, referring to how stars like Lionel Richie, Michael Jackson, and Tina Turner were taken from black culture and transformed into mainstream pop icons with little credit given to their roots. Mooney didn't sugarcoat his criticisms. He used humor to speak truth to power, often making points that cut straight to the core of how black artists were treated. In one performance, he warned the black audience not to get too attached to him, saying, "White folks will come in and take me. They only want ends to have a little bit of fun." His words highlighted how the entertainment industry could take what it wanted from black talent but rarely offered them real control or authority. While Paul Mooney was vocal about Oprah, Richard Pryor took aim at the entire Hollywood system. Pryor's life was filled with struggles, from substance abuse to personal demons, but one thing was clear. He saw the rot in Hollywood, and he wasn't afraid to talk about it. In one particularly revealing interview, Pryor's bodyguard exposed the kinds of parties that Pryor was invited to: elite Hollywood gatherings filled with drugs, power plays, and exploitation. The bodyguard opened up about some unsettling realities surrounding the Hollywood elite and how they viewed black stars like Pryor and Flip Wilson. He began by talking about the atmosphere of Hollywood parties, where shocking behavior took place, including wife swapping, drug use, and orgies.
So you seen the orgies, you seen the people that was the stars, and the that they was doing. In this clique, you know, we wife swap and all this kind of
These wild gatherings were frequented by some of the biggest names in the industry, with people indulging in behavior that was far removed from the public image they presented. Pryor's bodyguard recalled seeing famous figures engaged in bizarre and dehumanizing acts, which exposed the darker side of fame and success. The bodyguard also mentioned Flip's frustrations about being one of the few black men in positions of power and wealth, especially in a place like Malibu, which was predominantly white. He shared Flip's pride in being one of the only black homeowners in Malibu, unlike other black celebrities like Miles Davis, who was merely renting. However, despite this success, Pryor was deeply disillusioned by what he saw behind the scenes in Hollywood.
Flip one day looked at me and said, "Oh, you want to see the huh? I don't know what this is, but I want to see something other than Malibu." And he took me to the parties. He took me to the to make me understand this is why I don't be around this.
According to the bodyguard, Pryor believed that even though he was accepted into the circles of the white elite, they still viewed him and other black stars as mere tokens. This sentiment was reinforced during those wild parties, where the reality of racial dynamics and exploitation became all the more evident. Flip's pain and discontent extended to his career choices as well. The bodyguard spoke about Pryor's famous character Geraldine, a flamboyant persona he portrayed on television. While the character was beloved by audiences, Flip was deeply conflicted about the implications of a black man performing in drag. During that era, for a black man to wear a dress, even for comedic purposes, was often seen as a humiliating concession to white audiences. Flip worried that playing Geraldine might reinforce negative stereotypes or diminish his image as a strong black man. Despite this, Flip continued with the role, believing that Geraldine allowed him to say things as a black woman that he couldn't as a black man.
And the main reason he did Geraldine, he said, was because at that time, Geraldine could say some things as a black woman that a black man couldn't say.
What's more, Pryor's bodyguard recalled Pryor's reflections on the broader treatment of black entertainers. Pryor recognized that black stars, no matter how successful, were still being controlled by the same power structures that oppressed everyday black people.
If you notice, white people will always let you know, here's what the black artists are making. They never tell you what the white artists are making though.
In any case, Richard Pryor was one of the few people who can be regarded as the early godfathers of the art any day of the week. Pryor didn't only lay the foundation of what has become the template of making it big time in the comedy line of work, but many of our current greats either took lessons from him or just straight up walked the same path as him. However, like any other major success story in the entertainment industry, Pryor's life was far from perfect. In fact, there were targeted attempts at destroying the legacy he created while he was still living and breathing. All of this happened while this man was sitting at the pinnacle of early Hollywood, and more so, right in front of the entire world. It's several decades later, and the creatives I was talking about that modeled their lives after him, yeah, they seem to have discovered even more terrible things the man had to live through at the hands of Hollywood that never made it to social media reports, well, at the time, newspaper reports.
He pushed those boundaries. You didn't know how much trouble he was gonna get in.
You ever notice how nice white people get when there's a bunch of around?
Might be surprising to see that people who have been established for years in the entertainment industry are speaking up for someone that's no longer even here. In truth, the matter goes far beyond just Richard Pryor's life experiences. While there's the place of doing what is right, for no other reason than expressly because evil should never be patted on the back, Pryor's case was just an example of what many of these people stand to face if they don't fight for what's right, particularly in an industry that has been against their art from the earliest of its days. You may think with all the information floating about Richard Pryor over the years that his limits were just his ability to make people laugh on stage. Truth is, that was only just where it began for Pryor. The man also made appearances on a couple of TV shows and was one of the first to prove that the talent everyone so dearly loved to watch on stage could be very well replicated into television content. When Pryor walked off the stage for the last time on December 10th, 2005, he did so quietly, with little of the verve and brashness that defined so many of his groundbreaking moments as a storyteller, comedian, recording artist, and actor. However, making people laugh wasn't exactly a once-in-a-lifetime type of talent during the years Pryor cemented himself as a pioneer in comedy. The reason he got so much attention was that he constantly made it his job to push boundaries that had been barely explored by the creatives that had come before him. I'm talking about telling jokes that border on the deep racial issues that have plagued Hollywood for decades. It was so bad that although people always laughed at these jokes at his shows, there were more than a few occasions where the man landed in trouble just for speaking about his reality, and if that wasn't enough to scare him to stop when he was a young man, imagine the life this man lived.
I know what I want.
He likes the Wonder Wheel. Let's blow it up right away.
The black man.
Today, there are several incredibly talented comedians and actors. With most of them, though, the truth is they had to brush up on that talent by taking classes or just following the formal system in one way or another. This was a luxury that Richard Pryor could only dream about in his days of pursuing the limelight. Throughout his life, Pryor was extremely frustrated with Hollywood. He believed that Hollywood was built on exploitation, and he wasn't afraid to call out the figures responsible for maintaining that system. In present-day Hollywood, fans have been claiming that these figures were like Clive Davis and Diddy. Clive Davis is often praised as the genius behind some of the biggest stars in music, like Whitney Houston and Alicia Keys. To the public, he was the man with the golden ear, always knowing how to create a hit. But for those on the inside, like comedians Paul Mooney and Richard Pryor, Davis wasn't just a music mogul. He was a puppet master pulling the strings in ways the average person couldn't imagine. Fans have speculated for years that Davis had a disturbing amount of control over the artists he worked with, especially Whitney Houston. It wasn't just her career he influenced. Some say he had a hold on her personal life too. In fact, the revelations surrounding Clive Davis and his potential to profit from Whitney Houston's untimely demise have sent shockwaves through the music industry. These discoveries have shed light on the notorious death clause, a provision that has long been shrouded in secrecy and controversy. This clandestine clause, also known as a non-performance or failure of performance clause, raises grave concerns due to its alarming implications. As findings have unveiled, the death clause is a contractual stipulation that grants record companies an astonishing level of power and potential for profiting, even in the face of an artist's untimely demise. This seemingly nefarious maneuver ensures that labels are not only entitled to recoup their investment, but also to lay claim to a substantial portion of the deceased artist's earnings from various revenue streams.
Think about this for a moment. When an artist signs his name on the dotted line to a record company, the record company will in many cases own all of the masters for the songs recorded under that contract.
The mechanism through which this clause operates is shrouded in secrecy, yet it essentially empowers companies to secure hefty insurance policies against the projected earnings of their artists. In a twisted turn of events, this provision renders record labels as beneficiaries of both the life and death of the very talents they are meant to nurture and promote. Intriguingly, this malevolent clause has evolved over time, adopting a subtler facade while maintaining its exploitative essence. Once valued in thousands, it now holds the potential to be worth billions, owing to the colossal investments labels make in nurturing and promoting burgeoning talents. The insurance policies procured under this clause serve as a safeguard against potential losses in the event of an artist's incapacity or demise, thereby safeguarding the label's investments and projected profits. Amidst this maelstrom of revelations, speculation has begun to swirl around the extent of Clive Davis's involvement with the death clause. As a mastermind behind the success of many artists, including Whitney Houston, questions arise about whether he reaped any benefits from the tragic loss of his prized protege. While no concrete evidence has surfaced linking Davis directly to this exploitative clause, artists and insiders have started to come forward, painting a troubling picture of his role in potentially capitalizing on the grim provisions of the clause. It was no secret that the music mogul appeared to be more invested in making money than in his protege's well-being. You see, Whitney died on Feb. 11, 2012, the day before the Grammy Awards. This was hours before she was to attend Davis's annual pre-Grammy party. At the time, the public and lovers of her music worldwide were devastated by her passing. However, Davis, Whitney's self-proclaimed friend and mentor, still hosted his pre-Grammy party in the Beverly Hilton Hotel on the evening of February 11th, despite the singer's body remaining inside the building until 12:45 a.m. At the start of the event, he shared a tribute to Houston, saying,
"By now, sadly, you've all learned of the unspeakably tragic news of our beloved Whitney's passing."
The Grammy Award winner continued, "I am personally devastated by the loss of someone who has meant so much to me for so many years. Whitney was so full of life. She was so looking forward to tonight, even though she wasn't scheduled to perform. Whitney was a beautiful person and a talent beyond compare. She graced this stage with her regal presence and gave so many memorable performances here over the years. Simply put, Whitney would have wanted the music to go on, and her family asked that we carry on. But if you thought Oprah and Clive Davis were the only elites whose actions could be called out by Pryor and Mooney, then you are in for a big shock. So many people have also had plenty to say about figures like Diddy. Known for his extravagant lifestyle and constant reinvention, Diddy became a symbol of both success and secrecy in the industry. But in the past few months, his whole world seems to have come crushing down on him, as he has received hundreds of lawsuits from people who all claim he SA'd them. For over a decade, Diddy managed to avoid getting caught. And that's because he wasn't operating alone. He had some very powerful people backing him up. Not only that, but he had a bunch of hotels across the country on his payroll, as well as a network of people who were responsible for making sure his victims stayed quiet. In some cases, if they weren't silent, they might have even ended up dead.
Carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten victims and witnesses. Now, Combs did not do this all on his own. As I mentioned, Combs has been charged with RICO conspiracy.
It turns out that Diddy was running a full-blown criminal enterprise. This wasn't just about throwing wild parties, it was way more sinister. The enterprise was involved in forced labor, transporting people across state lines for prostitution, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and even obstructing justice. According to reports, Diddy used force, threats, and manipulation to get women to participate in these freak-off parties, which were not only disturbing but were also recorded on video. Some of these parties lasted for days, and the victims had to be given IV fluids just to recover from all the physical and emotional damage they endured. If that wasn't already bad enough, most of Diddy's victims were flown into the US and forced into these depraved acts. They didn't sign up for any of it, and Diddy and his people used all kinds of twisted tactics to control them. One of the things that came out in the investigation was that they used tons of lubricants and baby oil on these victims, both women and men, to carry out the assaults.
And they seized cases and cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs. More than 1,000 bottles altogether.
This raid was a huge turning point in the case. For a while, it looked like Diddy might just get away with a few lawsuits and not see the inside of a prison. But now, with all this evidence stacking up against him, it seems pretty clear that he's going to be spending a lot of time behind bars. And let's not forget that this case has brought up a lot of old allegations against Diddy, including claims from people like Cassie and Jaguar Wright, who have spoken out about him in the past. One of the most interesting people to weigh in on this situation is comedian Cat Williams. If you've been paying attention to him lately, you'll know that earlier this year, Cat basically predicted that 2024 would be the year of truth-telling. And he wasn't wrong. During an interview with Shannon Sharpe, Kat specifically called out Diddy, saying that this would be the year he'd finally be exposed for who he really is.
It's all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. All lies will be exposed.
And now, here we are. At any rate, Pryor and Mooney weren't the only ones who seemed to know about Hollywood's dark secrets. Other celebrities have hinted at similar stories but kept their distance. So why were they so vocal? Some say it was because they knew they were nearing the end of their careers. They had nothing to lose. Others think they felt a responsibility to the black community to expose the exploitative nature of the industry. Both men wanted their legacy to be more than just comedy. They wanted it to serve as a wake-up call. Now, with recent accusations against Diddy and a resurgence of conspiracy theories about the Hollywood elite, their words feel more relevant than ever. Pryor and Mooney's critiques aren't just the ramblings of comedians. They are haunting reminders that Hollywood's glamorous facade might be hiding something sinister. Maybe Richard Pryor and Paul Mooney were ahead of their time, using humor as a shield to deliver hard truths. They took huge risks, sacrificed their careers, and faced backlash. But here's the thing, they weren't just entertaining us, they were warning us. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.